trade. Welcome in to the CHGO Blackhawks Pregame Show. My name is Mario Tirabassi. I'm flying solo for the pregame show. Jay Zawoski was expected to be off all night tonight, but as you may have heard, sometimes plans change. So Jay will be in on the postgame show, but this is the pregame show for Blackhawks and Ducks because that's why you're all here, right? That's the biggest thing going on right now is tonight's game. We will give a little bit of credence to tonight's game because this is technically a pregame show, but we're going to talk about the Seth Jones trade that just happened. But before we get into that, just want to make sure you guys are all liked, subscribed to the CHGO Sports YouTube page, Twitter pages, all that good stuff. Like and subscribe, share the video, share our page, all that stuff. Rate and review on your favorite podcast apps. Tell all your friends, all that good stuff you know by now. Spread the word, and that helps us in a big way. So, tonight, Blackhawks and Ducks. We got the lineups here. I'm going to do something here, Sarah, real quick. I'm going to put 5 minutes on my phone timer. When that goes off, we're done talking about tonight's game, and we'll cram as much pregame stuff as we can for the first 5 minutes.
I like that.
And then we'll get into the Seth Jones stuff. So, 5 minutes on the clock. Here we go. The lines tonight are affected by the Seth Jones trade, obviously. Also, Nick Foligno and Philip Kurashev not in the lineup. So it'll be Andreas Athanasiou getting his first action in a couple months in the NHL. He'll be on the top line with Connor Bedard and Tyler Bertuzzi. Landon Slaggert, Frank Nazar, and Colton Dach remain together. Teuvo Teravainen, Ryan Donato, and Ilya Mikheyev make up the third line, and Pat Maroon, Craig Smith, and Lucas Reichel will make up the fourth line. Reichel getting back into the lineup because of the Kurashev injury. Alex Vlasic and Alec Martinez make your new de facto top pairing. Ethan Del Mastro was supposed to play with Seth Jones tonight. He's going to be playing with TJ Brody, who was supposed to be scratched. Wyatt Kaiser gets back up into the NHL and gets right into the lineup. He is paired with Connor Murphy, and your starting goaltender tonight is Arvid Soderblom. I'm expecting a better effort than we've seen in the last couple of games. I know last game on Thursday night was, it was a run and shoot game, but when you get down 5-1 in the first period, as the Blackhawks did, like you're fighting from behind. So I'm expecting this team to have a better effort because it is the Anaheim Ducks. It's not a team that's necessarily fighting for a playoff spot. This is a team that is still towards the bottom of the NHL standings, and it's a team that you should be able to have a better performance against. Arvid Soderblom was the replacement for Peter Mrazek in Thursday night's game after the first period. I still don't think that him playing in that game is going to really affect him too much going into tonight's game. I think it's a good setup for him to play against the Ducks. Like, he's been the Blackhawks' best goaltender all season. I don't have any worries about him. Andreas Athanasiou coming right back and getting the top spot with Connor Bedard and Tyler Bertuzzi is a choice, but I think at this point, would you rather him there with his speed or on the fourth line? Like, I mean, you could make the case to say give Reichel that opportunity, but this is Lucas Reichel coming right off of a scratch. So I think putting him into the lineup back in that fourth line spot with his buddies Pat Maroon and Craig Smith is good. So I think lineup wise, it's going to be okay. I like the Slaggert, Dach, and Nazar line together. Hopefully they get a little bit more opportunity. Frank Nazar has been on a heater the last couple of games. And then defensively, with Seth Jones being out, I think we were all kind of getting a little excited about potentially seeing Ethan Del Mastro paired with Jones for tonight's game, but that excitement tanks knowing that he's going to be paired with TJ Brody. So without Seth Jones now in the defensive rotation, you have an opportunity for guys like Wyatt Kaiser to get back in and kind of show what he's got at the NHL level now. After being down with Rockford, you get more opportunities for Ethan Del Mastro. And I think you're going to see Alex Vlasic get leaned on heavily here. I think tonight's minutes shake out will be interesting to see. Vlasic and Martinez, like I said, I think they're definitely the de facto top pair tonight. So they're going to get the majority of the minutes. And with Jones out, I wonder who is going to get that power play time. I'd imagine it's both Martinez and Vlasic, but we'll see how it shakes out, because those guys will also likely pick up some more slack with the penalty killing unit. So special teams is going to be a big thing tonight. And I think at this point in the season, with the Blackhawks and now being post Seth Jones, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what you take away from this game and what we want to take away from this game. I think we're not really changing course too much with, I think it's what the young guys are going to be doing. I think that's going to be the big thing that everyone is should be focusing on, is guys like Landon Slaggart and Frank Nazar and Colton Dock, Ethan Del Mastro. Now you got Wyatt Kaiser into the mix too, that he's back up. So you get an opportunity to kind of still take away from these remaining, 23 games, I think it is, for the season. You get to, take away from what the young guys are doing in this game. And I think what'll be interesting is what happens with the goaltending situation. Arvid Soderblom's the starter tonight. He's been the best goaltender for the Blackhawks this year. But now in the Jones trade, you have another young NHL goaltender getting into the mix when you already have Peter Mrazek and Laurent Brossoit. So Soderblom is the starter tonight. Be interesting to see how it all shakes out. That's the timer. All right, we are no longer talking about this game coming up.
Finally,
yeah. Let's get into the real stuff. So, take a breath. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Seth Jones has been traded officially to the Florida Panthers for along with a 2026 fourth-round pick, for a conditional 2026 first-round pick, and goaltender Spencer Knight. Right off the hop, as I was driving in, Jay called me. I believe he's at his buddy Rick Camp's bachelor party, so that's interesting. he'll have to come in, and it's a late game. I feel bad because a bachelor party, that's on a Saturday night. That's a more fun way, I think, to spend a Saturday night than watching this Blackhawks team. But lo and behold, best laid plans always change. But I think with the Jones trade, Jay called me, and I kind of was just like, I was shocked a little bit. I think we all had a good inkling that this deal could very well come down to March 7th at the trade deadline, and by all indications, Seth Jones kind of pushed the Blackhawks a little bit to get something done when he did come out publicly and say, like, yeah, we've been discussing trades. I want to have this happen. I want to go to a contender, all those things. But we heard from the Blackhawks end of things as more details started to kind of leak out, is that they weren't necessarily feeling pressure to get a trade done at this time, because they were content with being able to have Jones be on the team. Besides his commentary in the last week, all signs indicated that it wasn't a distraction to the team, and he's a well-liked guy in the locker room, and that it wasn't going to be an issue having him in the lineup, having him around, even though the quote-unquote trade request was out there in the open. But it appears, they were able to get something done, and as I think it was Elliot Friedman in the last couple of days on the 32 Thoughts podcast threw out the idea of him, Seth Jones rather, going to the Florida Panthers in a deal where, maybe you saw Matthew Tkachuk with his injuries coming from the Four Nations face-off tournament. Maybe that was a route that the Panthers would be able to go, being able to get Jones with that money that would be opened up if Tkachuk was put on LTIR. But then you get into the retention section of this trade, and it's $2.5 million for the next, I believe, was 5 years of the deal. So whatever the math is, it cuts down Jones from being a $9.5 million defenseman to a $7 million defenseman, which, if you said Seth Jones was making $7 million from the jump, I don't think the perception of him from this, from Blackhawks fans and from, NHL fans in general would have been as, I don't know, negative, I guess. I think a lot of the negativity and I guess, for lack of a better term, vitriol towards Jones, when things weren't going well, when he wasn't playing at the top of his game, was for the fact that he was just vastly overpaid. And if you got the same results from Seth Jones in his time with the Blackhawks at $7 million rather than $9.5 million, I think it would be a completely different situation. But it's just where things shake out. And Seth Jones, in his time here in Chicago, I think for on the ice, you got pretty much what you could have expected out of him. He's a guy that's not perfect, but he's a guy that can play on a top pair, is obviously a top 4 caliber defenseman. He's a guy that has the ability to play 25, 26, 27 minutes a night, play in all situations, play against the toughest competition. And he did all of that when he was here in Chicago. And, he was coming here with a promise from a previous GM that the team was going to be competitive. The team was going to try and contend and be in the playoffs. And he was brought in with Marc-Andre Fleury and Jake McCabe. And there was this, hey, we have some young guys, but we're going to push you and some of these other guys here into the mix and try and make this team a playoff team again. And then the guy that signed him was gone from the organization shortly into that season. The head coach was fired, and they went in a completely different direction than what he had signed up for. So the entire time he was here, he was in a situation that he didn't want to be in. But I think as time went on, he definitely got better at being a little bit more open, at least publicly, with the media and everything. Got a little bit better with handling things. And at the end of last season, at the end of the season press conference, was vocal in saying that, the team needed to go in a better direction than being at the bottom of the league. And, him and Nick Foligno were guys, players that were pumping that message. Kyle Davidson had that same message. And then as the season has gone on, as we all very well know, it has not gone according to plan. So you get a guy that didn't sign up to be on a rebuilding team, that is on a rebuilding team, and a guy that has tried to make the best of the situation he's been put in. His patience was run thin. So I don't blame him for wanting to go to a contender. And now he's got his wish. He's with the defending Stanley Cup champions, and he's going to be put into a situation where he's not going to have to be that every situation guy. He's not going to have to be number 1 power play, number 1 penalty kill, play 25 plus minutes, and do all of that. So, he's going to a place where Gustav Forsling, former Blackhawk, and Aaron Ekblad are 2 other top tier defensemen. I'd say on his same level, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on who you talk to, but within that same level of defender. So the spotlight in that group is not going to be solely on him. So I think that's a good situation for him, and it's a good situation for the Florida Panthers. And now bringing it back to the Blackhawks side of things here, I think this was a win-win situation for this trade. I think Florida gets exactly what they wanted. You get a top-tier defenseman who's cost-controlled, who's making less than he was originally making, and you do that while you also have Aaron Ekblad up as a unrestricted free agent this summer. So you get that guy to replace him in Seth Jones. So that'll be an interesting situation to see how it pans out for the Panthers, but that's the Panthers' problem. For the Blackhawks, you get a first-round pick, whether it's 2026 or 2027. It's a first-round pick. Yeah, it's from the Panthers, so it's going to be a late first, but a first-round pick is a first-round pick. I don't think you can, turn your nose up at that. And you get a goaltender in Spencer Knight, who a former first-round pick, 13th overall in the 2019 draft. He's a guy that I think immediately steps into the organization and is your top goaltender. As great as Arvid Soderblom has been this year, this has been a resurgent season for him. I still think I would regard Spencer Knight higher than Arvid Soderblom. I would definitely hold him higher than Peter Mrazek, than what Mrazek has shown this year, and we haven't seen Laurent Brossoit on the ice for the Blackhawks all season. So, with those four guys that you now have in your NHL goaltending rotation. So, what did I say? Soderblom, Knight, Mrazek, Brossoit. Yeah, 4. 3 of them healthy. You got to figure something out here, because you're not going to send Soderblom the way he's been playing to Rockford. I think sending Peter Mrazek to Rockford would be quite the stir. I think acquiring Spencer Knight and sending him to Rockford would be very odd. So carrying 3 healthy goaltenders, you rarely ever see that in the NHL. So I doubt that would be the case. So now you bring up the question of, what do you do? Do you move Mrazek or Soderblom before March 7th? I think that question gets brought up here. And again, you never wish for these things to happen, but somehow, some way, these things always sometimes seem to figure themselves out. But as it stands right now, the Blackhawks have 3 healthy NHL caliber goaltenders. So they're going to have to figure out what they want to do with that. And that 2026 first round pick from the Panthers is conditional. And it's kind of confusing. At least to me, it was a little confusing, because the condition on the pick was, if the Panthers don't have their 2026 pick, then it becomes the 2027 pick. But I didn't know how you couldn't have your 2026 pick as a condition if you just traded your 2026 pick to the Blackhawks. So I asked Mr./Mrs. Puckpedia themselves. I said, quick question. On the condition of the first round pick in the Seth Jones deal, do I have it correct that it will be the 2026 first round pick if Florida doesn't make any other trade involving that pick, because they still technically own it conditionally until after the 2025-26 season is over? And the response was, well, it's traded conditionally to Chicago, but they can basically swap it for 2027 and trade it elsewhere. So that's the explanation I have here. So essentially, it sounds like Florida still controls what year that pick is going to be based on the condition. But whether it's 2026 or 2027 from Florida, it is still their first round pick. So again, I think it's a win for the Blackhawks to get a goaltender that you can say is, yep, peg them for the future starting goaltender position with the organization. And then you get a first round pick, which could be, late 20s, whatever year it's going to be, the way that Florida's set up and how they'll contend. It's going to be a late first pick either season, but a late first is still worthy of getting something back in this Jones deal, especially when you're not retaining the full 50% of his contract for the remainder of the deal, the 5 years. You're doing it at a fraction of that. I think it's 26% is the number that's going to be retained. So it's not the full 50. You get two assets back that are both first round quality. First round quality, young goaltender and then a first-round pick. I think that's a good deal coming back for Seth Jones, and the 2026 fourth-round pick, which, okay, whatever, who cares? So I think it's a good deal. I think it benefits the Blackhawks moving forward because you add something to what you could say was still a weakness for this organization when you look at the goaltending spot basically beyond this season. You have a lot of question marks, and you still have Adam Guyan and Drew Comezzo coming up through the prospect system. But adding Spencer Knight to that, though, he's immediately at the front of the line. And Arvid Soderblom is an RFA this offseason, so the Blackhawks would still have a decision to make on him. But I think adding Spencer Knight kind of gives you that insurance of, well, if a deal can't get done with Soderblom, or you feel like striking while the iron is hot and coming off of this season, maybe you trade his RFA rights and get something back from that as well. Maybe there's a team out there that would be interested in getting a guy that's in his mid-20s that's coming off of a career year. You might be able to strike while the iron's hot, like I just said, on a guy like that, and you have Spencer Knight in the fold there, where you're not necessarily giving up on a guy that you could see as a future NHL starter for quote unquote the long term, because you already have a guy that fits that bill. So again, I think this is a good deal. We're going to get into it way more when after the game here between the Blackhawks and Ducks. I had to remind myself who they're playing tonight, and Jay will be here, so we'll get the full breakdown of the deal, and we'll see how it impacts the team. I know there's been some questions about leadership, like literal leadership group, and who's going to be wearing letters for the team, with both Nick Foligno and now Seth Jones not being in the lineup tonight. Blackhawks could have 3 alternate captains in tonight's game. I know who's the other one, Murphy. So Murphy will have one. It'll be interesting to see who else it's going to be. You could see, I know we've kind of discussed it a little bit, but we could see Alex Vlasic potentially have that given to him. You have, trying to think of the lineup here. You have Pat Maroon, Craig Smith, like those are veteran guys that if you're just saying like, oh, who can wear a letter so that they have, the ability to talk to the referees, because that's, basically outside of just a visualization of this person's a leader, that's also one of the privileges that those players get, because you can't just have every player talking to the refs when, there's a penalty explanation or anything like that. It's supposed to be guys who are wearing letters. So, you have Pat Maroon do that. He's a veteran. He's, I'm sure, a guy that even without wearing a letter talks to the refs a lot. So that'll be interesting to see how it pans out. And moving forward, the rest of the season, who could be part of that leadership group, who's going to get the opportunity to kind of step up and into the future, because Seth Jones was supposed to be with this team for a long time, part of that leadership group for a long time. So now that spot is opening up. I see we have 2 super chats here. Get to the first one here from Thomas, loyal listener and watcher. $4.99 says, Jones was a good player in a bad situation that was not of his making. I don't blame him for wanting to win. Best of luck to him in the future. Yeah, like I said, like it wasn't Seth Jones coming to the Blackhawks in that summer of 2021 saying, yes, rebuild, sign me up, long-term deal, lots of money, sounds great. Wasn't the situation that he was walking into at that time. And yeah, it's unfortunate that it didn't work out better for him and for the team. I think we'd all prefer to not be in a rebuild, but it's the situation that we're in. Nico, or Neko, like the wafers, $1.99 says, should Davidson go after a right-handed defenseman before March 7th? Maybe. I'm open to it. I know the idea of the Blackhawks being buyers at the trade deadline has kind of been floated out there. We've talked a little bit about it. I think if in these kinds of deals moving forward now, as we go through the trade deadline and then into the offseason, Davidson has said, like, it's not just trying to get picks as future assets. It's trying to get players that are young and needing an opportunity to get into the NHL, or, right on the cusp of being NHL ready. And frankly, in this trade, you get both. You get a first-round pick, and you get a 23-year-old goaltender who was a backup to Sergei Bobrovsky, and was likely going to be for the rest of the time that he was in the Panthers organization. Because Bobrovsky, without looking at it offhand here, I think he's got another 5 years on his contract with the Panthers at a lot of money, $10 million. So, for Spencer Knight, he would have really had to overplay Bobrovsky to get an opportunity to be a starter. And I think that would just kind of an uphill battle for him with the Panthers. Oh, just 2 more years with Bobrovsky. I thought it was a lot longer, this season and next. But still, for Spencer Knight, like, he gets an opportunity to step into a Blackhawks organization that needs help at the goaltending spot, and he's going to get the opportunity to do it for sure. So if they want to go after a guy, defensemen, they have a lot of young guys. Kevin Korchinski could still come up. Nolan Allen was just sent down to the Ice Hogs. I think he would come back up. They have Sam Renzel likely signing at the end of his college season. You have Artem Levshinov, who's not NHL ready yet, but he's made strides in the AHL. So, you don't necessarily want to bring in anybody that's going to quote unquote logjam the defensive core that you have in the prospect system. But I'm open to Davidson continuing to make deals where you get guys that are maybe at the end of feeling like prospects because they're ready to be in more elevated NHL roles. And they're, if they're in their mid to early 20s, all the better. One more here from Scott, $5, says, do you think with the younger kids probably having to step up next year, we will see the 70-point season or a Sharks season where we suck, but it's fun? I think next year, if you have a majority of young guys in the lineup, in the locker room, like, I think that's going to change the atmosphere around the team. Because I think when you have a veteran group like they did this year, and you have the season that they did, where you're at the bottom of the league, you're losing, it's the expectation was not to be here, and now you're there, and now you have a lot of veterans who didn't necessarily sign up to be at the bottom of the league, maybe in the middle of the league, but not at the bottom. It can affect the mood of the locker room, and I think we've seen that from some of these guys. We've seen it from Seth Jones. I think if you have, a younger group where, you're hoping to change the vibe, I think you could see that. They might still be bad, but they might at least be a lot more fun, a lot more interesting as far as the future of the organization goes. Like, you can start seeing those building block pieces start playing in the NHL and getting those opportunities. I would love for the Blackhawks, I've said this before, I would love for the Blackhawks next year to be a young team. You can still be bad, and I think as long as your young guys are getting the opportunities to push their development forward at the NHL level, I'm gonna sign up for that. I would definitely love to see the group start pushing forward in the NHL and do it together. And I think that that's going to be a big thing for Connor Bedard too. Like, if he can play more with his quote unquote buddies, and guys that are going to be part of the organization for the long term alongside him, I think that would be a lot more fun for him and probably for everybody involved. I think we're going to wrap it up because puck drop is just a couple of minutes away. I'm going to check real quick here, see if there's any information on the lineup changes. Kaiser is with Brody. Del Mastro is with Murphy, but everything else is the same. So, yeah, we're ready to go. Blackhawks and Ducks. Check them out, and we'll be here, me and Jay, after the final horn on the CHGO Blackhawks postgame show. Become a diehard if you haven't, and we will see you after the game. Thanks, everyone.
We all silly like the mayor.